There is a particular kind of person you meet occasionally after 60, and once you notice them, you never quite forget the impression they leave. They are not necessarily wealthier than everyone else their age. They have not necessarily had easier lives, free of the losses that tend to accumulate by this point in a person's story. Some of them have buried spouses. Some have outlived siblings or watched friends fade in ways that are hard to witness. Some have faced illnesses that would have understandably broken a lesser resolve. And yet there is a lightness to them, a genuine ease that younger people often mistake for simply having fewer problems left to worry about, when in reality it is almost the exact opposite. They have had exactly the same amount of hardship as everyone else their age. Sometimes more. They have simply built something quietly inside themselves that most people never get around to building at all, because nobody ever told them it was something you had to build on purpose. The Stoics understood, 2,000 years before modern gerontology confirmed it with actual longitudinal data, that happiness in the later decades of a life is not primarily determined by health, wealth, or favorable circumstance. It is determined by a small number of daily habits, practiced consistently enough, for long enough, that they eventually stop feeling like effort and simply become identity. Today I'm going to walk you through 7 of those habits, drawn directly from the lives and private writings of Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca. Stay until the end, because the 7th habit is the one that quietly makes the previous 6 actually last. Rather than fading the first time life becomes genuinely difficult again, which it eventually always does. Welcome back to Accent Stoic, the home for timeless philosophy applied to real modern life. If you're new here, this channel exists for one purpose: to take the hard-won wisdom of men like Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus and translate it into something you can actually use in your relationships, your daily habits, and yes, in the years after retirement, when life tends to ask its most honest questions of all. If that sounds like exactly what you need, consider subscribing, because we release new Stoic wisdom every single week, designed to help you build a genuinely unshakable sense of contentment. Let's begin. Habit 1. Narrow your concern to what's actually yours. Epictetus opened his entire philosophy with a single distinction that becomes more valuable, not less, with every passing year of a life. Some things are within our control, and some things are not. Our judgments, our conduct, our own effort, our own attitude toward whatever arrives. These are ours completely, without exception. Other people's choices, the pace and shape of our own aging body, outcomes we have already done our honest best on, these are not ours, no matter how tightly we grip them, or how much energy we pour into wishing otherwise. After 60, this distinction takes on a specific weight it simply did not carry at 30 or 40. There is more, by the very nature of this stage of life, that has genuinely moved outside your control than there used to be. Your adult children's decisions and the paths they choose. Your body's current capabilities compared to what they once were. The health and availability of old friends, who are, quite naturally, aging alongside you. The people who remain genuinely happiest through these years are not the ones stubbornly pretending they can still control everything they once could decades earlier. They are the ones who have gotten ruthlessly, calmly honest about exactly where that boundary sits now, at this stage, and who have redirected their available energy accordingly toward whatever genuinely remains theirs to actually direct today. Here is a practical version of this habit. Each morning this week, take one situation currently occupying your worry: a grown child's decision you disagree with, a friend's declining health, an uncertain medical result, and ask honestly, what part of this is actually mine to act on? And what part have I simply been carrying out of habit, long after any useful action was actually available to me? Release the second part deliberately. Redirect the energy toward the first. Habit 2. Walk with attention. Not just for exercise, Marcus Aurelius composed many of his most important private reflections while walking the frontier camps of the Roman Empire, observing the natural world around him with real deliberate attention, rather than simply moving his body from one point to another out of obligation. The Stoics called this specific practice prosouche, sustained attention, and it remains one of the most powerful and underused tools available for keeping an aging mind genuinely sharp. Not primarily through the physical exercise itself, valuable as that is, but through the specific quality of noticing that a deliberate, attentive walk actively cultivates over time. The physical benefits of walking are well documented and worth mentioning briefly. Improved cardiovascular health, better balance, reduced fall risk, stronger bones. Every physician will tell you to walk regularly, and they're right too. But the Stoics understood something deeper about walking that modern fitness culture has almost entirely forgotten in its focus on step counts and calories burned. Walking done correctly, with real attention, is a practice of presence, not merely a form of physical maintenance. Try this on your very next walk, and I genuinely encourage you to actually try it rather than simply nodding along. Leave the phone in your pocket. Skip the podcast or the music entirely. Walk in complete silence and give yourself one simple task. Notice 5 specific things you have genuinely never noticed before on this exact route. The particular color of a leaf catching afternoon light, the sound a specific bird makes that you've walked past 100 times without registering, the way morning light falls differently across the same familiar street depending on the season. This sounds almost too simple to matter, and yet neuroscience backs this up in ways the Stoics could never have proven, but clearly intuited through direct observation. Novel sensory input stimulates neurogenesis, the growth of new neural pathways, particularly in the hippocampus, the region of the brain most associated with memory. A walk on the same treadmill, staring at the same wall, does very little for this. A walk where the mind is actively searching, actively noticing, actively alive to its surroundings, does a great deal. If these first 2 habits are landing for you tonight, drop the word attention in the comments below. I want to know how many of you are building this alongside me. Habit 3. Read deeply rather than widely. Seneca, writing to his friend Lucilius in what we now call Letters from a Stoic, gave some of the most practical advice on reading ever committed to paper, advice that is almost never actually followed even by people who consider themselves genuinely avid readers. He said something that sounds strange at first encounter. Don't read many books. Read a small number of books deeply, repeatedly, until they become genuinely part of you. He compared shallow, scattered reading to a traveler who visits many countries but has no home anywhere, someone who accumulates many acquaintances but no actual friends. The same, he argued, is true of books. Read carelessly and quickly. This advice matters enormously in these particular decades of life, and here is why. One of the most well-established findings in cognitive aging research is that genuine, focused, sustained reading, not scrolling, not skimming headlines, is one of the strongest predictors of preserved cognitive function into advanced age, independent of nearly every other health factor researchers have controlled for. Reading forces the brain to hold complex ideas across time, follow long arcs of reasoning, and build vocabulary and memory simultaneously, functioning as a genuine full-body workout for a muscle that most people stop training entirely the moment they leave formal schooling behind. But the Stoic angle on reading goes well beyond brain health alone. Seneca called reading philosophy a conversation with the dead, and he meant this as something genuinely comforting, not remotely morbid. When you read Marcus Aurelius, you are, in a very real sense, sitting across from a man who ruled Rome nearly 2,000 years ago, and he is telling you, in complete and unguarded honesty, about his own fears, his own failures, his private attempts to become a better man. For someone whose social circle has naturally contracted with age, a real and often painful fact of these years that nobody discusses openly enough, reading philosophy offers something extraordinary. An unbroken chain of genuine company that never dies, never moves away, and is never too busy or too tired to speak with you, even at 2 in the morning if sleep won't come. Begin with a single page each morning before anything else competes for your attention. Sit with it honestly. Ask yourself, quite literally, whether it applies to your actual life right now, today. Keep a small notebook beside the book, and when a line genuinely strikes you, copy it out by hand. There is something about the physical act of handwriting a sentence that cements it into memory far more effectively than passive reading alone ever manages. Habit 4. Practice amor fati through patient, unglamorous work. The Stoics had a concept called amor fati, the love of fate, an active and deliberate embrace of reality exactly as it actually is, including its limitations, its natural seasons, and its inevitable endings. This does not mean passive resignation to whatever happens. It means an active, disciplined acceptance of reality precisely as it presents itself. And there is no better daily teacher of this particular discipline than work that operates entirely on its own schedule, regardless of your personal impatience with its pace. A garden, a craft, any unglamorous activity that gives immediate honest feedback with absolutely no interest whatsoever, in your opinion, of how quickly it should proceed. A person who takes up gardening or woodworking after 60 is, whether they consciously realize it or not, enrolling themselves in a daily masterclass on the dichotomy of control. You do the part that is genuinely yours to do, the watering, the careful joint, the precise measurement, the placement in sun or shade. You release your grip on the part that has never been yours, the weather, the unpredictable grain hidden inside a piece of wood, the simply unpredictable behavior of nature itself. Some seasons the harvest is abundant beyond expectation. Some seasons a late, unexpected frost destroys an entire season's careful work overnight. The Stoic gardener does not rage against that frost, because raging against something that has already happened has never once, in the entire history of gardens, undone the damage. The Stoic gardener simply plants again, because that is the only useful response reality actually leaves available. There is also, and this should not be understated or dismissed as merely anecdotal, a genuine physical benefit worth naming directly. Gardening and similar craft work are low-impact, full-body activities involving bending, carrying, and fine motor coordination that maintains flexibility and strength in ways gentle enough for aging joints, but demanding enough to actually matter over time. Studies on horticultural therapy specifically have shown measurable reductions in cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, after even brief sessions of hands-in-soil work. But beyond the measurable biology, there is the simple, undeniable emotional truth that this kind of work gives a person a genuine reason to go outside every single day, rain or shine, because something out there depends on them showing up. Habit 5. Keep a nightly honest reckoning. Seneca described a nightly practice he learned from an earlier philosopher named Sextius, one he adopted fully as his own daily discipline. Each evening, before sleep, ask yourself 3 honest questions. What bad habit did I curb today? What fault did I resist? In what way am I better than I was this morning? This is not journaling for its own vague sake, and it is not the fuzzy, unspecific self-help version of reflection that most people abandon within a week of starting it. It is closer to an honest audit, conducted gently and without cruelty, like a friend carefully reviewing your conduct, rather than an enemy searching specifically for ammunition to use against you. For someone navigating these particular decades of life, this practice does something especially valuable that is genuinely easy to underestimate from the outside. It interrupts a vague, low-grade anxiety that quietly develops from feeling like your days are simply passing without being fully lived or examined, a feeling that tends to intensify considerably once the external structure of a career no longer organizes each day automatically the way it once did, providing built-in deadlines and evaluations and colleagues who noticed if you slipped. A nightly review replaces that diffuse, unnamed unease with actual, specific, gathered evidence collected fresh every single night that you are still growing, still paying genuine attention, still actively becoming rather than simply passively aging in place. Here is how to start tonight in under 5 minutes, with no special equipment or elaborate journal required. A plain notebook is fine, and the Stoics themselves were genuinely suspicious of excessive luxury, even in the tools of virtue. Ask yourself the 3 questions honestly. Write brief, honest answers. What matters here is the honesty itself, not the polish or the aesthetic of the entry. We are past the halfway point now. Everything from here builds toward the habit that determines whether the previous 5 actually hold steady, especially on the days that genuinely test them. If you've made it this far tonight, drop the word purpose. In the comments below, I want to know which habit is already resonating with you. Habit 6. Mentor someone, even informally. The Stoics believed that human beings are, in Marcus Aurelius's own words, made for cooperation. In precisely the same way, the upper and lower rows of teeth are made to work together in service of a single function. A life lived purely in private leisure, cut off from contributing anything to others, was for the Stoics only ever half a life. After decades of hard-won, genuinely specific knowledge about a trade, a craft, a way of navigating hardship, a way of raising a family through difficult years, a way of surviving loss and continuing forward anyway. Most people at this stage of life possess something genuinely rare that simply evaporates unused into nothing, without any deliberate channel available to pass it forward to someone who might actually need it. This mentorship does not need to be formal, structured, or arranged through any official program, though those exist, and can be genuinely valuable too. It can be as simple and unstructured as a grandchild, a young neighbor just starting out in adult life, or someone newer in a field you spent an entire career mastering, who happens to ask a question you actually know the answer to. Seneca wrote that in teaching others, we teach ourselves twice over, because the very act of explaining something clearly to another person forces you to organize, re-examine, and often deepen your own accumulated understanding of it, testing it against fresh questions you might never have thought to ask yourself. And there is a specific, quiet satisfaction available in being genuinely useful to someone else's growth that private leisure, however comfortable and well-earned, never quite manages to replicate entirely on its own. Consider what we now understand about cognitive reserve, the brain's measured capacity to withstand age-related changes by having built dense, flexible neural networks across a lifetime of complex, varied activity. Teaching and mentoring rank among the most cognitively demanding activities a human being can perform, requiring you to model another person's mind, anticipate their confusion before it fully forms, restructure your explanation in real time, and respond with genuine patience to questions you may have answered 100 times before. This is an extraordinarily rich form of mental exercise, arguably richer than nearly anything else on this list, precisely because it asks so much of you in service of someone else. Habit 7. Let mortality clarify rather than frighten you. Here is the final habit, the one that quietly gives the previous 6 their genuine staying power over time. Memento mori, remember that you will die, was practiced by the Stoics not as a source of dread or morbid preoccupation, but as a tool for precise, immediate clarity. Roman generals, according to tradition, would have a servant walk behind them during victory parades, quietly whispering some version of this exact reminder, even during their greatest moments of public triumph, when it would have been easiest of all to believe themselves invincible. Marcus Aurelius returned to this idea constantly throughout meditations, reminding himself again and again that he could leave this life at any moment, and that this single fact, rather than being a source of despair, should shape every choice he made about what he said, did, and thought in whatever time actually remained to him. After 60, mortality naturally stops being an abstract concept encountered occasionally at a distant funeral and becomes instead a present, woven-in physical reality, part of the ordinary texture of these years in a way it simply wasn't before. Most people respond to this genuine shift by avoiding the thought entirely, filling every available silence with distraction rather than facing the fact directly and honestly. But the Stoic response runs in precisely the opposite direction. And this is exactly why this final habit makes the 6 before it genuinely durable, rather than merely pleasant ideas that fade under real pressure. When you deliberately allow the fact of finite remaining time to clarify rather than frighten you, the old grudge you have been quietly nursing for years suddenly looks smaller than it did 5 minutes earlier. The phone call you have been postponing indefinitely suddenly looks genuinely urgent in a way it simply didn't before you let yourself think clearly about time actually running out. This is not morbid preoccupation. It is, quite simply, the single most effective filter available to any human being for deciding honestly and without illusion what actually deserves the remaining hours you have been given. 7 habits. Narrowing your concern to what's genuinely yours to direct and releasing the rest without guilt. Walking with real, deliberate attention rather than merely for physical exercise. Reading deeply and repeatedly rather than widely and carelessly. Practicing amor fati through patient, unglamorous work that operates on its own honest schedule. Keeping a nightly honest reckoning that replaces vague unease with specific evidence of growth. Mentoring someone, even informally, and discovering that teaching sharpens your own understanding twice over. And finally, letting the fact of your own mortality clarify your priorities rather than frightening you into avoidance and distraction. None of these 7 habits require youth, particular wealth, or circumstances significantly different from the ones you currently have access to. Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, and Epictetus built this entire philosophy while facing grief, exile, and years of enslavement respectively, and it has survived completely intact for over 2,000 years, precisely because it was never actually dependent on easy or favorable circumstances to begin with. That is exactly what makes it available to you today, in whatever stage of these decades you currently find yourself standing in. You don't need to adopt all 7 habits starting tomorrow morning. Pick one. The single habit that made you genuinely pause somewhere in this video, the one that quietly nagged at you a little longer than the others did. Practice that one habit deliberately for the next 7 days, on purpose, and notice what genuinely begins to shift in how these ordinary days start to feel from the inside. If this video gave you something real tonight, something worth carrying into tomorrow, hit that like button before you go. It costs you nothing, and it tells this channel to keep making exactly this kind of content for exactly this audience. And if you haven't already, subscribe to Accent Stoic, because this is genuinely the work we do here week after week, built specifically for the years that matter most. Tell me in the comments which habit you're starting with this week, and which one, if any, you already practice without ever having given it a name until tonight. I read every single comment, and some of the most powerful stories on this channel have come from people exactly like you, sharing exactly how they rebuilt something meaningful in these very years. Until next time, you have not run out of chances to build genuine, lasting happiness. In many real ways, you have been given the clearest chapter yet in which to finally practice it on purpose, starting today.